Good evening students. Today we are going to discuss about our 9th lesson in biology, that is our environment. So here what is meant by environment? Do you know that? So here environment is what is environment actually? So why should we need to learn about environment means? So here environment is the sum of physical factors along their biological factors. Means, so if you, for example, in lower classes you studied about a habitat. What is a habitat actually? The place when an animal or plant can live, that is we called as habitat. For example, pond as a habitat, tree as a habitat, like even forest. So different places. So actually the place where we can live, that we called as habitat. But in this lesson actually what is environment? So up to our basic knowledge, the surroundings only we called as environment. But simply environment is not just a surrounding part. So environment, it include both biotic factors and abiotic factors. So coming to biotic factors means biological factors, means here all living organisms include plants, animals, microbes, we all together called as biotic factors or biological factors. But for the survival of biological factors or for the existence of biological factors, they need some requirements. So for example, coming to take humans as an example, for our survival, what are our basic needs? We need water, we need air, and at the same time we need soil, especially plants need soil for their growth. So these all are our basic factors like air, water, soil, those all, even sunlight. So these all factors we call as abiotic factors, means those not having life in them. But for existing of any living organism, it should be depend on the abiotic factors. So here in the environment means it is the sum or it is nothing but the interaction between the biotic factors and abiotic factors. Means if you take any ecosystem like forest ecosystem or desert ecosystem, organism, it benefits or it takes its need from its environment. So every living organism in an ecosystem, it maintains a balance with the remaining other living organisms as well as and abiotic factors also. For example, you just consider plant as an example. What are the requirements for plant growth? For example, plant need water. At the same time, plant need carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. At the same time, plant needs sunlight for preparation of food. So here the plant is the biotic factor. Its requirements are from abiotic factors, but not only abiotic factors. For example, remaining animals all are release CO2 during respiration. That CO2 again enter into the atmosphere, and that CO2 will be used up by the plant. And what is the oxygen released in the photosynthesis process, that is again utilized by the remaining animals. So here there is interaction between plant and animal. For example, plant prepare food for themselves as well as for remaining other animals also on the earth. But the animals also in different way they will be utilized for plants. Means after the death of the animals, they will be decomposed in the soil, which add nutrients into the soil, and that nutrients will be taken up by the plant. So here in this way every living organism, for its survival, it maintain a balance or interaction with the other living organisms and abiotic factors like sunlight, water, soil. So here actually that is only we have to learn it. So here these are chemical interactions, physical factors, biological factors, and the chemical interactions takes place between these two factors. The whole together we have to call it as environment. So maybe in lower classes you studied about food chains. So what is the food chain actually? So here food chain is the representation, it just shows the relationship between the different organisms, how they depend on one another, how they depend on each other. So food chain shows the relationship between different organisms in the view of feeding mechanism. So in the food chain, in any ecosystem, either it may be forest ecosystem or desert ecosystem, in any ecosystem, basically a food chain shows 4 levels. How many levels? 4 levels. So in any ecosystem, the food chain mainly contains 4 stages or 4 levels. Each level we called as one trophic level. Means here the food chain in any ecosystem first starts with the producers. What is that? Producers. So maybe you have doubt, what are meant by producers actually? Producers, in the name itself only, the producers are the organisms which produce food actually. So what is the answer? So all green plants on the earth come under producers. Why? Because of the photosynthesis process, all the green plants on the earth, they prepare food. So those are come under the category of producers. And remaining other animals including human, they depend on plants either directly or indirectly. So for example, some of the animals like deer, goat, rabbit, so these all animals, cow, buffalo, these are mainly directly depend on the plants. We call them as herbivores. But for example, if you take long animals like lion, tiger, cheetah, these all animals, they won't eat plant parts directly, but they can eat the herbivorous animals. But the herbivores, how they can get their food? From the plants. So even the carnivorous animals also indirectly they again depend on the plants only. So because of that reason only, we can call the plants as the universal food providers. What we can call means, we can call the plants as the universal food providers. So in the food chain always starts with the producers, means green plants, grass, these all come under the producers. And the animals which directly consume the plants or the producers, we can call them as primary consumers. What we can call? Primary consumers. Why? Because they directly eat the producers. And the animals which can eat the primary consumers, we can call them as secondary consumers. And at last, the animals which feed on the secondary consumers we called as tertiary consumers. So basically food chain in most of the cases it does not exceeds this 4th level. Some maybe a very little rare cases, maybe it includes 5th level. So here we can see 2 examples for the food chains. So these are very common examples given in your textbook. For example, grass was eaten by an insect called as grasshopper, and grasshopper again eaten by the frog, and frog was eaten by snake, and snake and eaten by the carnivorous bird known as hawk. So in this, grass is called as producers and grasshopper primary consumer, frog secondary consumer, snake tertiary consumer. So here next one, grass again eaten by the rabbit, and rabbit was eaten by the fox, and fox was eaten by the wolf. So here grass was the producers, primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer. So these are the different levels of food chain. But not only the food, actually here you know that food chain, but in the environment one organism, the food chain shows who eats what, and the arrow marks always point the food from feeder, So in the, if you observe any food chain, we can get one idea that how which organism eat, and which organism means frog was eat grasshopper eats the grass. So we can get basic idea. And here a food chain is the actually simple one, but in the ecosystem or in the environment many organisms, so one organism may not be food for one particular one, it may be food for many other organisms. So for example, you can take for example here in these two examples, in one of the example grass was eaten by grasshopper and grasshopper was eaten by frog, and this will continue, but at the same time maybe grass was eaten by rabbit, rabbit was eaten by fox. So here grass was food for two different organisms. The same way, for example, we can see an example that for example, these food chains actually simple ones, but in ecosystem, different organisms may be food for different organisms. At the same time, different organisms will be depend on, for example, grass was eaten by cow, grass was eaten by small insects, and grass was eaten by some herbivores like even deer, goat, those all. But at the same time, for example, maybe some insect, if you take grasshopper was insect by insectivorous bird, maybe sometimes it is eaten by frog. So here different organisms, their dependence will be different. So here we can say that we can use a special term that is known as food web. Food web is the term which is used. It is the interlinking of various food chains. Food web is the interlinking of various food chains. Means in the food web we can see that how an organism will be provide food to various other organisms, and we can see that how one prey bird will be eat different types of lower organisms. So here compared to food chain, food web is a complex. At the same time, every organism in the food web having its special position. That special position we called as niche. So niche is the specific position of an organism in the food web. For example, if you know that in the food web, for example, you can take plant an example. So an aphid, if it is a small insect, it can just suck the juice of the plant leaves. What can aphid do? Aphid simply suck the juices of plant leaves. For example, if you see caterpillar by having strong jaws, it will bite the leaves of the plant. And for example, you can take goat or cow, they will eat the grass or the vegetation. So if you can clearly observe, these three organisms will be eat the plant only, plant leaves only. But the way how they take in the food will be different from one to another. For example, if it suck the plant juices and caterpillar bite the small portion of the leaf, and here goat or cow will be in a different manner. So here the niche specifically denotes the occupation or special position, means how the organism fit into its suitable position in the food web, that is described by the niche. And by knowing the niche of that organism, we can know that what is the position of that organism and what is the mode of its life. So everything, the lifestyle of an organism actually we can know by using the niche. And not only, for example, to describe the organism's interdependence, we can use food chains. It is one of the example. But not only food chains, to describe the interdependence, how the organisms will be connected with one another, to show that food chains are one of the way, and another one ecological pyramids. So in these pyramids, actually we take the graphical representation of the pyramid to explain about the various organisms or various trophic levels. So ecological pyramids was first used by the scientist known as Charles Elton in the year 1927. In the year 1927, Charles Elton was the scientist who used the word known as ecological pyramids. In the ecological pyramids, again those are three different types. First one is pyramid of number, second one pyramid of biomass, third one pyramid of energy. So in the pyramid of number, so how an ecological pyramid is there? In this way. This is actually in a like triangle. So this one we called as pyramid, ecological pyramid. So in that first one we can say that pyramid of number, second one pyramid of biomass. And if you take any pyramid, and the pyramid always starts with the producers, means the base of the pyramid always starts with the producers, and after producers what are that? Primary consumers, and after primary consumers those are secondary consumers, then later tertiary consumers. So the tertiary consumers are top carnivores, occupies the tip of the pyramid, and the producers are at the base, are at the first level. So each level in the pyramid we can call as one trophic level. What we call? One trophic level. Means actually this is one level, means producers are first trophic level, second trophic level, third trophic level, in this way. And in the pyramid of number, the scientists use to count the number of organisms in the pyramid. So for example, in the pyramid of number, the pyramid is always upright, means while observing the number of organisms at each level in the pyramid, scientists they found that the number of organisms from one level to another level will be decreases. At the same time, the size of the organism increases from one level to the next level. For example, if you take a forest ecosystem, so first the leaves or the vegetation eaten by the small birds, small insects known as aphids. So these aphids again eaten by the different insectivorous birds like warblers, those all. So compared to the aphids number, for example, if you take the aphid number, for example, this is the ecological pyramid, and here this is the vegetation, and here these are aphids directly eat the leaves of the plant or grass. So these aphids are uncountable in number, and it means these are astronomical in number, means they are more in number. But the number of organisms which eat aphids like insectivorous birds, those are less number compared to the number of aphids. And after that still like hawk, carnivorous bird, the hawk number is very less, either 1 or 2. So here the number of organisms from producers to carnivores, here the number of organisms will be decreases, means here first trophic level contain more organisms, and the number of organisms at each level will be decreases. At the same time, size of the organism, if you compare to the size of the aphid, the bird's size, insectivorous birds having a little bit body size, and hawk is really a huge bird. So here the size of the organism is increases from one trophic level to the another trophic level, but the number of organisms always decreases from producers to the top level. So that is pyramid of number. Next, pyramid of biomass. So here biomass is the any organic material which is used for energy production, that we call as biomass. For example, all plant parts like leaves, stem, grass, when roots, flowers, those all parts, even animals excretions, animal parts, dead animal parts, these all are come under actually biomass only. If we used the biomass products for energy production, that we called as biofuel. In fourth lesson we learned that jatropha seeds are used for production of biodiesel. So here biomass is used for energy production, then we call them as biofuel. So any organics of plants, by the photosynthesis process, they fix the carbon dioxide into carbohydrates or glucose, and that food will be entered into different other organisms through the food chain. So here all parts of both plants and animals are come under biomass only. So compared to the biomass in the terrestrial ecosystem, means on the land ecosystem, the biomass is the amount of biomass will be decreased from one level to the another level. Here why? Because means at each level nearly only 10% of energy is utilized for the production of new tissues by the organisms, and remaining 90% of the energy is lost in the form of heat, So during the process of respiration and during remaining other process, most of amount of energy is lost in the form of heat. So here the organisms are incapable to utilize them. So for example, plants fix 100 kgs of biomass. In that only 10% only will be transferred to the primary consumers. From that only 10% will be transferred to the next secondary consumers. So here biomass decreases from bottom to top, means the organic matter. So what we can call, means simply how can we say that the amount of or the quantity of food material which is above for the next level, that we can refer as biomass. Means how much amount of food, how much amount of body mass will be reached to the next level of organism, that we called as biomass. And here so organisms, they can consume more food, but in that mostly it is wasted in the form of heat production, and some of amount of food or biomass used for its daily activities, only little amount only converted into formation of new tissues. So but if you take an aquatic ecosystem, the pyramid of biomass is inverted. Why? Because if you take phytoplanktons means small like algae, small grass or small green plants which are present on the surface of the water bodies like oceans, seas, ponds. So these phytoplanktons having very less amount of biomass. So these phytoplanktons will be eaten by the, so for example, phytoplanktons will be eaten up by the zooplanktons means small animal organisms. So compared to the phytoplankton biomass, zooplankton having a little amount of biomass. At the same time, one zooplankton may eat either 2 or 3 phytoplanktons, and these zooplanktons are eaten up by the small fishes, crabs, those all. So these are having more biomass than compared to zooplankton. And finally, a large fish will eat maybe 6 to 7 small fish. So the biomass is still more. So in normal time, the pyramid of biomass is upright in terrestrial ecosystem, but the pyramid of biomass is inverted in the aquatic ecosystem. Why? Because these phytoplanktons, the producers of the aquatic ecosystem, having very low body mass or very less body mass. And pyramid of number is always upright, pyramid of biomass is also upright, but only pyramid of biomass is inverted at the aquatic ecosystem. And in the pyramid of number, some exceptional cases are there. For example, if you consider large tree, so I already told to you the number of organisms will be decreases from one trophic level to another trophic level. But if you take a large tree like banyan tree as an example, so here in that cases the pyramid is not upright actually. Why? Because means in that cases only one tree is there. On that tree maybe more insects are there, and for eat that insects many birds will come. So at that time some exceptional cases means some special cases. So in that case the pyramid of number is maybe have to inverted. Why? Because one tree having many insects and still many birds will eat that plant and plant parts and insects. Okay. Next, last, pyramid of energy. So it is also like similar to pyramid of biomass only. So I already told to you, at every level nearly 10% of the, for example, from producers to primary consumers, only 10% of energy will be transferred, and from primary consumers to secondary consumers only 10% of energy only transferred. So most of the organisms, for example, plants by the annual leaf fall or by the death of the plants, because of that say they lost some biomass, means that energy will be not transferred to next level. The same time For example, maybe birds or other organisms, they eat animal and plant parts. In that, some of the parts are not digested, means for example exoskeletons of the insects, bones of the animals, at the same time hard nuts of the plants, these are not digested, those are excreted. So that is also means in that also some amount of biomass is lost. So here if the biomass is transferred very low level, at the same time energy transfer is also in a lesser way, means from the top carnivores receive only less amount of energy. At every step 10% of energy only will be transferred, 90% of energy will be released in the process of respiration in the form of heat. And now we can see the examples of different examples how the human activities will affect the natural balance of ecosystem. First we can take an example of Kolleru Lake. So the Kolleru Lake is one of the largest freshwater lake in Andhra Pradesh, and its catchment area is nearly 6121 kilometer square. And the Kolleru Lake, it is the largest freshwater lake, and here it can opens into the Bay of Bengal. It releases its excess water into the Bay of Bengal through smallest twisty water canal are known as Upputeru, which is nearly 65 kilometers long. And this Kolleru Lake having good nutrient deposition, and generally at normal time many wide variety of flora and fauna, means very number of plants, animals, birds can live in the surrounding area of Kolleru Lake. Nearly 193 species of native birds are resides in the Kolleru Lake area. And but along with that, from Eastern Europe and Northern Europe, nearly 20 lakh migratory birds will come every year between October to March months. So because of these all regions, in 1999 the government of India declared the Kolleru Lake as the bird sanctuary. In 1999 the Kolleru Lake was announced as the bird sanctuary by the government of government of Andhra Pradesh. So this Kolleru Lake actually because of the 20 decade, especially in 20 decade, because of the growing of fishes or fish farming was started in the Kolleru Lake. So for the fish farming, actually they construct the bunds in the Kolleru Lake that will affect the natural flow of the water. At the same time different sediments and different pollutants from industries and agricultural wastes, human waste, all will release into the Kolleru Lake. Because of that the water gets polluted, and this shows again the effect on the aquatic organisms like fishes live in that water. So what happened? So here anyway, because of that the Kolleru Lake was spoiled and its natural water balance will be disturbed. So we have to so that's why, because of that, to clear the pollution in that Kolleru Lake, the government of Andhra Pradesh started Operation Kolleru to remove the pollutants from the Kolleru Lake. Next, one more example is EBWR, means Adilabad Water Reservoir, and especially the scientists studied the heavy metal contamination. They take the example of the fish known as Cyprinus carpio, which grown in the Adilabad Water Reservoir. And this Cyprinus carpio, one common scalp, it was actually common, one type of fish. And here, because of the more utilization of fertilizers and from industrial effluents, the pollutants are increased in the water bodies. So these pollutants not only enter into the water, maybe they enter into the organisms, and these organisms, from one organism to another organism, the concentration of these pollutants will be increased. So here we have two terms, that one is bioaccumulation and biomagnification. So here the entry of pollutants into the organisms we called as bioaccumulation, but the tendency for increasing concentration of pollutants we called as biomagnification. Means for example some of the some of the pollutants will be destroyed or degraded in the short time, means in the year time, but most of the pollutants like arsenic, lead, cesium, cadmium, these all heavy metals, many years they take to degrade. So such type of chemicals will be enter into the organisms through the food chain, and the concentration will be increases from one level to another level. So the topmost organisms in the food chain will receive more concentration of these heavy metals or pollutants. So for example, especially in most of the cases, here the top organism is nothing but man or human only, so he receive more pollutants. So because of the more heavy metal contamination, it lead to some disorders like sporadic fever, diarrhea, high BP, hypertension. These all are the some common symptoms. Next, these cyprin, so in the Adilabad water reservoir, by the frequent studies, they collected the samples of water in the 3 seasons, pre-monsoon, monsoon and post-monsoon, and in every season they collect 3 samples at 3 different places. And after their study, in the Adilabad water reservoir, the concentration of heavy metals in this way means iron, lead, chromium, nickel and cadmium. But at the same time they study the concentration of heavy metals in the Cyprinus carpio body parts also. So in this fish, the concentration of these pollutants is in this way, like first one cadmium, chromium, iron, nickel, lead. So in the water, the pollutant concentration in this way, in the fish body the pollutant concentration in this way. And they can show that the cadmium, the fishes, especially the gills and the kidneys of the fishes, more sensitive towards the cadmium pollution. So the cadmium is accumulated in the gills and kidneys of the fishes, and from the fishes, the humans who consume that contaminated fish, this cadmium will be entered into the human's body also. It causes renal damage, sporadic fever, hypertension, those all. And next, the major tragedy in the 1956 that we called as Minamata disease. So Minamata disease, it was seen in Minamata city in the Japan in 1956. It is the most unforgettable tragedy. So this Minamata is caused by the chemical known as methyl mercury. So you have to remember that Minamata is caused by MM, means methyl mercury. So this methyl mercury was released by the Chisso chemical factory in the Japan, and here this methyl mercury releasing from that factory, it continue up to from 1930 to 1968 years. And because of that, the aquatic fishes which are live in the either Minamata and Shirani bays, the fishes bodies are contaminated by methyl mercury poison, and the humans who consume that fish and remaining other organisms will be died. So the deaths continue up to 36 years, like cats, dogs, humans are died continuously up to 36 because of the poison of methyl mercury. And next, one more tragedy we seen that is Chinese sparrow campaign. It was occur in 1958. So normally the Chinese government start to develop some programs which help them to increase their revenue, or which help to compare or compete with the remaining other developed countries. So apart from this, in the part that it developed some initiative programs, it made some farmers into clusters or groups, and it developed some agricultural practices. So in this way, up to in the first year, the benefit was very good, means they are gaining more income. So in the next year, their guesses or their expectations but the weather was not cooperated. But the agricultural scientists, actually they will calculate the production in a wrong way. So because of that, there is no balance between the demand and production of the grains. So then, to cover their mistake, the agricultural scientists, they simply tell that the sparrows only spoil the grains. But So at that time Chinese government, it just behaves in a cruel way. It just promotes some offers to kill the sparrows. So these sparrows were killed by, it just offers some prizes, some rewards to governments, schools, even government agencies. So in the part of that, they are continuously beating drums or firing. By many ways they kill the sparrows. But after that, it already too late. At that time, the scientists, some of the scientists, they just cut and open the digestive system of the sparrows, and they tell that only 1/4 of the sparrow's intestine is filled with the grain. Remaining 3/4 of the stomach is filled with pests which will eat the croplands. So because of that, even at that time it was too late. So at that time the scientists know the value of sparrows, but already most damage was actually over. So because of that, up to few years the food production will be greatly affected in the China. Next, steps toward, so anyway by using chemical fertilizers or chemical pesticides, it is not good for crops. It show effect on the humans, plants, even environment. But how can we control the usage of chemical pesticides and fertilizers? Means here some natural methods are there to prevent the usage of pesticides and fertilizers. First one, rotation of crops. So growing alternate crops in the same piece of land, means 1 year rice and the next year either pulses, like that. We can have to change the crops. So here attack of pests will be reduced. And studying life, if we know the life history of pests, at what time the pest mainly damage the crop, because of that we can sow the crops at particular time. And next one, biological control. And in the nature, every organism is food for another organism, and every organism is provide food for another organism. At the same time, it will take food from other organisms. So in the nature, some natural predatory insects, predatory birds are there. We can insert into the natural predatory insects and birds. We can control the pests without uses of fertilizer. Next, sterility. By rendering the male into sterile, we can stop the promotion of the population of pests. Next, genetic strains. By using the varieties which can able to control the pest attack, we can use such type of genetic seeds or genetic plants. That is one method. Next, by following some environmental ethics. So because of all these, we can balance the environment in a proper way. Thank you, students.